The private jet's door opened and Tae-Woo stepped onto Egyptian soil after 15 years. But he wasn't the hungry boy who left. Designer suit, cold eyes, and an entire criminal empire behind him. He'd come back for one reason only. To find her. Madelin wiped down the counter of her small restaurant, humming softly. The lunch rush had ended and her feet ached, but she didn't mind. This place was hers. Every table, every chair, every recipe she'd perfected through years of struggle. She'd built it from nothing after everything fell apart. The bell above the door chimed. She looked up and the rag slipped from her fingers. "Hello, Madelin." His voice was deeper now, smooth like expensive whiskey, but she'd recognize it anywhere. 15 years vanished in an instant and suddenly she was 17 again, sneaking food from her grandmother's kitchen to the starving Korean exchange student everyone else ignored. Tae-Woo. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. He stepped closer and she noticed everything at once. The way his clothes probably cost more than her rent, the scar above his left eyebrow that hadn't been there before, the dangerous edge in his smile that made something flutter nervously in her chest. "You remember." He sounded almost relieved, maybe. "Of course She stopped herself, gripping the counter. "What are you doing here? I made you a promise once." His eyes never left hers. "I always keep my promises." Madelin's heart did something complicated. She remembered that promise, whispered on a rainy night when they were just kids and the world seemed full of possibilities. When he was just a poor student and she was the girl who believed in him. Before he disappeared without a word. "That was a long time ago," she said quietly, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Doesn't make it less true. Hey, pause for just a second and subscribe if you haven't already because stories like this don't pop up on your feed by accident. You found this for a reason, so let's make sure you don't miss the next one." Now where were we? A customer walked in and Madelin jumped, remembering where they were. Tae-Woo glanced at the elderly woman, then back at Madelin. "When do you close?" At 6 o'clock, but I'll be here at 6. He turned to leave, then paused. "You look beautiful, by the way. Even more than I remembered." Then he was gone, leaving Madelin standing there with her thoughts spinning wildly. He came back every day for a week. Not to talk about the past, not to explain where he'd been. Just to sit at the corner table and eat whatever she cooked. Sometimes he'd watch her work with this expression she couldn't quite read. Sometimes he'd help her carry supplies without asking. His expensive clothes getting dusty and him not caring even a little bit. "You don't have to do this," Madelin said on the 5th day, watching him stack bags of rice in her storage room. "I know." He set down the last bag and dusted off his hands. "But I want to." "Why?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. "Because 15 years ago, you were the only person who saw me as human. You fed me when I was starving. You talked to me when everyone else crossed the street to avoid me. His voice caught slightly. "You were my first reason to survive." Madelin's eyes stung. "Then why did you leave without saying goodbye?" "I had no choice." His jaw clenched. "And I can't explain more than that, not yet. Just trust me." She wanted to. God, she wanted to, but trust was complicated now. "I'll think about it," she whispered. The trouble started 2 weeks after Tae-Woo's return. Madelin was closing up when 3 men walked in, local gang members who'd been demanding protection money from businesses in the area. She'd refused them twice already. Spent too many years building this restaurant to let anyone shake her down. "Last chance, Madelin," their leader said, probably trying to sound threatening. "Pay up or..." The door opened behind them. Tae-Woo walked in looking relaxed, hands in his pockets, but something about him had changed. The air itself seemed to shift, grow heavier, and the 3 men actually stepped back instinctively. "Is there a problem?" Tae-Woo's voice was pleasant enough, but underneath it ran something dark and absolutely certain. "This isn't your business," the leader tried, but his voice shook slightly. "Actually..." Tae-Woo smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile at all. Anything involving Madelin is very much my business. So I'll give you 3 seconds to apologize to her and leave. 1. They were gone before he hit 2. Madelin stared at him, her heart hammering. What just happened? They won't bother you again. He said it like a simple fact, like he'd just commented on the weather. Tae-Woo, who are you now? He met her eyes, and for the first time since he'd come back, she saw something vulnerable flicker across his face. Someone who can protect you. Someone who has the power to make sure you're safe. That's all that matters. That's not all that matters, she argued, but probably her voice was too soft. Probably she was already falling again. They fell into a rhythm after that. Tae-Woo would appear at random times. Sometimes during her morning prep when the city was barely awake, sometimes late at night when she was doing her books. He never pressured her for more than she wanted to give, never pushed past the boundaries she set. But he was there. When her oven broke down, a new one appeared the next morning. When a drunk customer got aggressive, Tae-Woo materialized from nowhere, and the man suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. When Madelin mentioned missing her grandmother's village, he drove her there the following weekend in a car that probably cost more than her entire building. You're doing it again, she said during that drive, watching the countryside roll past. Doing what? Taking care of me. You don't have to, you know. His hand tightened on the steering wheel. I know I don't have to. Want to. There's a difference. But why? Because. He exhaled slowly. Because when I had nothing, when I was nobody, you gave me everything that mattered. You saw something worth protecting in me. So now I'm returning the favor. Seeing what's worth protecting in you. Which is everything, by the way. Everything. Madelin felt something crack open in her chest. Something she'd kept carefully locked away. I never stopped thinking about you, she admitted quietly. Even after you left. Even when I was angry. I never stopped. Tae-Woo pulled the car over suddenly, turned to face her completely. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I couldn't explain. I'm sorry for every day you spent wondering if I'd forgotten you. His voice dropped lower. Because I didn't. Not once. Not ever. They sat there in the pulled-over car, the silence stretching between them, full of 15 years of longing and loss and something that felt dangerously close to hope. So what happens now? Madelin whispered. Now. Tae-Woo's smile was soft, genuine. Now I ask if you'll give me a chance to prove I meant every word I said when we were kids. Starting with dinner tomorrow. A real date, not just me sitting in your restaurant. A date, she repeated, and maybe she was smiling too. If you'll have me. She should say no. Should protect herself. Should remember that he still hadn't explained everything, that there were secrets in his eyes and danger following him like a shadow. But still. Okay, she heard herself say. Tomorrow. The date was perfect. Tae-Woo took her to a rooftop restaurant where the city lights sparkled below them like fallen stars. He'd somehow learned all her favorite foods in the weeks he'd been back, ordered things he remembered her mentioning in passing. You're really not going to tell me what you do? Madelin asked over dessert, probably already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. Import and export, he said smoothly. That's the vaguest answer I've ever heard. It's also true. He reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. Does it matter? Should. It really should, but I don't know anymore, she admitted. Maybe I just want to be selfish for once. Want to believe in something good. Believe in me. His voice was urgent, intense. I know I don't deserve it, but believe in me anyway. Madelin finally closed that last bit of distance, let her fingers brush against his. The contact sent warmth racing up her arm, made her breath catch just slightly. I'm trying, she whispered. 3 months passed like a dream. Tae-Woo courted her the old-fashioned way. Flowers delivered to her restaurant, handwritten notes tucked into her apron pockets, long walks through the market where he'd carry her bags and argue playfully about which vegetables looked freshest. He never rushed her, never demanded more than she was ready to give. He just stayed. My friend thinks you're too good to be true, Madelin mentioned one evening as they sat on her apartment balcony sharing chin-chin she'd made. Smart friend. Tae-Woo's expression flickered with something dark before smoothing out again. What do you think? I think you're hiding something big, and probably I should be more worried than I am. She studied his profile in the fading light. But I also think you're the same boy who cried when I brought him his first real meal in weeks. The same person who remembered I loved jasmine flowers. So maybe whatever you're hiding doesn't change who you are at your core. He turned to face her fully, and the look in his eyes made her heart stutter. You have more faith in me than I have in myself. Then borrow mine until you find your own. Tae-Woo reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with both hands. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones so gently it almost hurt. I don't deserve you, he murmured. Probably not, she agreed softly. But I'm choosing you anyway. He rested his forehead against hers, just breathing her in, and Madelin felt safer than she had in 15 years. She should have known it wouldn't last. The truth came out on a Thursday. Madelin was at the market when she overheard two men talking, something about a Korean Mafia boss who'd moved into the area, consolidating power, making deals with dangerous people. She wouldn't have connected it to Tae-Woo except they mentioned his name directly. Her stomach dropped. She went home and did what she should have done months ago, searched his name online. And there it was, buried in news articles and police reports and international warnings. Tae-Woo Park, wanted in 3 countries, suspected head of one of Seoul's most ruthless criminal organizations. The man she'd been falling in love with all over again was a monster. Her hands shook as she scrolled through article after article. Drug trafficking, money laundering, suspected murders, though nothing proven. He'd built an empire on blood and fear and lies. And he'd been lying to her the entire time. When Tae-Woo arrived at her restaurant that evening with his usual soft smile, Madelin was waiting. Is it true? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. He stopped in the doorway, reading something in her expression. Is what true? Are you a criminal? A mafia boss? Everything these articles say about you. Is it true? The silence that followed felt like drowning. Yes. Just one word, but it confirmed everything. No excuses, no justifications, just the truth laid bare. Madelin's eyes burned. You've been lying to me for months. No. He stepped closer and she stepped back, saw him flinch. I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. Her voice cracked. You let me believe you were someone safe, someone good. I never claimed to be good, he interrupted quietly. I just wanted to be good for you. By lying. By hiding who you really are. Tears spilled down her cheeks now. I trusted you, Tae-Woo. I gave you pieces of myself I hadn't given anyone since you left, and this whole time you were. She couldn't even finish. I was trying to protect you. His voice was raw. From this exact moment. From having to choose between me and your conscience. You don't get to make that choice for me. I know. He looked wrecked, completely destroyed. I know, and I'm sorry, but Madelin, please, just listen. Get out. Madelin. Get out. She was crying fully now, her whole body shaking. I can't look at you right now. Just go. He stood there for a long moment, probably memorizing her face, then turned and walked away without another word. Madelin collapsed into a chair and sobbed until she had nothing left. The next 2 weeks were the worst of her life. Tae-Woo didn't come back, didn't call, didn't send his usual flowers. It was like he'd vanished again, except this time she knew exactly where he was. Out there running his criminal empire, being the person she couldn't reconcile with a gentle man who'd held her face like she was something precious. Her restaurant felt empty without him. You did the right thing, her friend Kayamika said over coffee. He's dangerous, Ade. People like that don't change. I know, Madelin whispered, but her heart wasn't convinced. Then the threat started. Someone spray-painted her restaurant windows. Dead flowers appeared on her doorstep. A note was slipped under her door. The Korean's woman should learn her place. Rival gangs, probably. People who thought hurting her would hurt Tae-Woo. They were right. Madelin was locking up late one night when a car pulled up. Not Tae-Woo's but someone else's. 4 men got out and her heart started racing. "Boss wants to talk to you," one said, and grabbed her arm. She screamed, fought back, but there were too many of them. They were dragging her toward the car when another vehicle screeched to a halt behind them. Tae-Woo emerged looking absolutely lethal. "Let her go." His voice was ice and death and promises of violence. "This doesn't concern you anymore, Park," one of the men said. "Word is you two broke up, so let her go." Each word was a threat. "Or I will dismantle your entire organization brick by brick, person by person, until there's nothing left but ashes and regret." Something in his tone made them actually release her. Madelin stumbled forward and Tae-Woo caught her, pulled her behind him protectively. His body was rigid with barely controlled fury. "If anyone touches her again," he said softly, dangerously, "I will consider it a declaration of war. And trust me, you don't want that war." The men retreated to their car and drove off. Only then did Tae-Woo turn to Madelin, his hands gentle as they checked her for injuries, even though his whole body was still trembling with rage. "Are you hurt? Did they?" "I'm fine," she managed. "Tae-Woo, I'm fine." He pulled her into his arms then, held her so tight she could barely breathe, and she felt him shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her hair. "I'm so sorry. I tried to stay away, tried to keep you safe, but they still—" His voice broke. Madelin clutched his jacket, breathing in his familiar scent, and felt something shift inside her. "This is your world," she said quietly. "This is what being with you means." Yes, he didn't sugarcoat it. "It means danger. Means people trying to use you against me. It means constantly looking over your shoulder. I can protect you, but I can't promise you'll ever feel completely safe again. And if I can't accept that—" His arms tightened briefly, then loosened. "Then I'll disappear for real this time. Leave the country, leave the business, become someone you'll never have to worry about again." Madelin pulled back to look at him. "You'd do that? For you? I'd do anything." His eyes were completely serious. "I'd burn down everything I've built if it meant you could sleep peacefully at night." Something cracked open in her chest, something that had been barely holding together since the truth came out. "I hate what you do," she whispered. "I hate that you've hurt people, that you've built power on fear. I hate that I can't reconcile the criminal with the man who remembers how I take my tea. I know. But I also—" She took a shaky breath. "I also know that you're the same person who starved rather than steal. Who promised to come back for me and actually did. Who's never once raised his voice at me even when I've thrown him out." Tears slipped down her cheeks again. "So maybe I hate your world, but I don't hate you. Maybe I can't, no matter how hard I try." Tae-Woo's expression crumbled. "Madelin, I need time," she said quickly before she could change her mind. "I need to figure out if I can live with loving someone whose hands aren't clean. But I also need you to be honest, completely honest about everything." "I will be." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "I'll tell you whatever you want to know, show you whatever you need to see. No more secrets. Okay." She was probably making the worst decision of her life. Okay. The honesty was brutal. Tae-Woo told her everything over the following weeks. How he'd gotten involved with the Korean Mafia after leaving Egypt. How he'd risen through the ranks by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone around him. How he'd built his empire on calculated moves and strategic alliances. But he also told her about the limits he set. No human trafficking, no drugs that destroyed communities, no targeting innocents. He'd become a monster by most standards, yes, but he'd tried to be a monster with rules. "Does that make it better?" Madelin asked one evening. "No," he admitted. "It just makes it slightly less terrible, maybe." She appreciated his honesty even when it hurt. And slowly, painfully, she started to understand the full picture. This wasn't a man who'd chosen evil for fun. This was someone who'd been desperate and alone in a foreign country, who'd been given two choices: join or die. He'd chosen survival and then couldn't find his way back. "Why didn't you leave once you had enough money?" she asked. Tae-Woo was quiet for a long moment. "Because I told myself I needed to be rich enough, powerful enough, untouchable enough before I could come back to you. I kept moving the goalpost, kept finding reasons to wait. The truth is," he exhaled slowly, "I was terrified you'd look at me exactly the way you did when you found out. That I'd lose you all over again. So you just stayed in that world. Until I couldn't anymore. Until 15 years felt like 15 lifetimes and I couldn't go another day without seeing your face." He looked at her with devastating honesty. "Even knowing you might hate me, I had to try. Had to see if maybe, somehow, you could still want the boy I used to be underneath all the terrible things I became." Madelin's heart ached. "I do want him. That's the problem. I want him so much I'm willing to overlook things I swore I'd never accept." "Then don't," Tae-Woo said simply. "Don't overlook them. Hold me accountable. Be the conscience I've been missing. I'll start dismantling the worst parts of my organization, transitioning to legitimate business. It won't happen overnight, but I'll do it. For you, but also for myself. For the person I could have been if things had gone differently." "You'd really do that?" "I'd do anything for you," he repeated. "I thought I'd proven that by now." 6 months later, Madelin stood in Tae-Woo's office watching him negotiate a business deal. A real, legitimate business deal with a Korean electronics company. He'd been slowly transforming his empire, cutting ties with the criminal elements, reinvesting in legal ventures. It was messy and complicated and probably would take years to complete, but he was trying. For her. For them. For the future he wanted to build. "What do you think?" he asked after the meeting ended, coming to stand beside her at the window. "I think you're different than you were 6 months ago," she admitted. "More at peace, maybe. I feel it." He took her hand carefully, lacing their fingers together. "Turns out having something real to protect changes your priorities." Madelin squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you. For trying, for changing, for being brave enough to walk away from power." "I'm not walking away from power," he corrected gently. "I'm just redirecting it toward things that won't make you look at me like I'm a stranger." She leaned against his shoulder, felt him wrap an arm around her waist. "I love you," she said quietly. "The boy you were, the man you're becoming, all the complicated parts in between. I love you." Tae-Woo turned her to face him, his expression full of wonder and disbelief and joy. "Say it again." "I love you, Tae-Woo Park." He smiled then, real and bright and completely unguarded. "I've loved you since I was 18 years old and starving and you brought me food without asking for anything in return. I loved you through 15 years of separation and bad choices and building an empire just to feel worthy of you. I'll love you until I stop breathing and probably long after that." Madelin felt tears prick her eyes. Happy ones this time. "So what now?" "Now." He pulled a small box from his pocket and her heart stopped. "Now I ask you properly the way I should have years ago. Madelin, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of the faith you had in me when I was nobody?" She looked at the ring, simple, elegant, perfect, and then at him. At the man who'd crawled out of darkness because she'd shown him light. The man who'd risked everything to keep her safe. The man who was choosing redemption over power because she'd asked him to. "Yes," she whispered, and he slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. They stood there in his office, holding each other. And Madelin thought about promises made by starving boys and kept by powerful men. About second chances and complicated love and choosing hope even when fear seemed smarter. "I'm still going to hold you accountable," she murmured against his chest. "Still going to push you to be better, to do better." "Good." Tae-Woo pressed a gentle touch to her forehead. "I'd be lost without your compass pointing me home." Outside the window, Cairo sprawled in all its chaotic beauty. Their city, their story, their imperfect but precious second chance. And for the first time in 15 years, Madelin felt completely, perfectly whole. So that's their story, friends. Messy, complicated, real. Sometimes love means forgiving the unforgivable, and sometimes it means holding someone accountable while still believing they can change. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Madelin's position. Would you have given him that second chance? And hey, stick around for more stories about love that doesn't quit even when maybe it should.